It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 300 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm joined by my bestie, my comrade in gaming commentary, James Mactionavoy, also known as the Return of the Mac, also known as the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, 300 episodes, buddy. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Lam, I was considering what we could do to commemorate 300 episodes.
What's that?
I kept seeing advice from a lot of podcasts that they were like, oh, for our big milestone, we recorded we did a live recording with people present and making comments and such. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds great. So I am thrilled to just highlight that for episode 300, this is live recorded on twitch.tv/Two Nerds in a Pod. This is going out to this. We're having people. Ishmael's here with us live, congratulating us on a happy 300.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Of course, the joke is that this is how we do it every episode, but 300 is special, and I will continue to treat this as the specialness that it is.
It is special, man.
Dude, it's exciting.
And you know what? I mean, it's interesting. For those who don't know, the origins of Two Nerds in a Pod is that we used to do a thing called Man Cave TV a long, long time ago. Mac and I used to live literally 5 minutes apart by car. Mm-hmm. And when I look back on that time, I think I took it for granted. We hung out a lot. We should have hung out way more.
Yeah.
But the way this started out was he would come to my house, we'd go in my basement, in my man cave, or we'd go in his living room, and we would go on Twitch, and we would talk about video games, and we would hang out, and we'd have Mountain Dew, and we did it like once a week, and it was called Man Cave TV, and it was like super unofficial, and we never really recorded the episodes. We just streamed them on Twitch and had a good time. And then when I moved, me and my family, we said, hey, let's keep this going, and we've kept it going, and it's Two Nerds in a Pod, and now it is 300 episodes in, and it's a great feeling, and I couldn't have done it with a better business partner, friend. So, Mac, thanks for joining me on this journey. I guess I should say you should be thanking me for joining you, because you do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I do the edit, but Lam, I think your crowd work. I can't work a crowd like you, and I certainly don't have your insight when you see something, Mr. Nice Guy, and you have questions that get to the heart of issues. And I mean, sure, I can edit, but I mean, you have it top of the dome, dude.
I appreciate it, brother.
That's a skill that I love and cherish, and I'm a bit jealous of, to be honest.
I'm realizing from reactions in the chat that people may not have known about the origins of our pod, Mac.
Yeah, it does look like this was news. So I'm glad that you shared.
Well, I got to ask you, memories of that time. Do you have a favorite memory of how we used to do that? Because we would literally rotate. Some weeks you would come to my place, some weeks I would come to yours, and it was super fun. Any memories? I guess I talked about Mountain Dew already, but it was just a fun time, man. Hanging out, and my kids were super young at the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they remember you coming over and hanging out, but it was just a great time. I remember once or twice we would play games after the pod and stream them. I can't even remember what game we played, but it was something retro.
I want to say it was one of the X-Men arcade games.
Something like that. But hey, great memories of those times. Mac, before we dive into episode 300, anything interesting happened this past week? How have things been, man? My week was boring.
My week was good. A lot of boring numbers stuff at work and such. But, boring but good. This weekend, though, we spent it taking basically apart the front of our car. One of the
Really?
fenders needed some attention, and so we got some replacements. We took the whole front off, and then we're like, well, those headlights could use a replacement. And so we took those off. We just basically redid the whole front of the car. Our car got a nose job, basically. It took longer than you expected, because that kind of stuff always takes longer than you expect. But it was good to do, good to have it out of the way, and a fun experience for us to do together. So that's my weekend excitement.
Awesome.
How about you?
Mine was very, very relaxed. It was literally just dad stuff, right? Soccer practice, got a little bit of gaming in.
Nice.
My kids are super into Fortnite, which is awesome. I love that they've found a game that they enjoy. Many games that they enjoy, actually. And I guess the new season of Fortnite started, so they were super excited to get into that. I played a game or two with them. It just hung around, man. It's getting to be warm here in the Midwest. Warmer, I should say. And so we're getting close to barbecue season. I will say one fun thing I did after I took them to soccer practice. I love Jamaican food. And someone had told me about this Jamaican restaurant in Milwaukee, downtown Milwaukee, called Up a Yard. And I went there, and super clean restaurant, super cool vibe, sports on the screens, Jamaican music playing, lots of people there. Ordered some jerk chicken with some plantains. I love me some plantains. And got some for my wife, drove them home and ate them, and the food was phenomenal, 10 out of 10. So excited to try out Up a Yard again. And you know what's interesting, Mac? I was being tempted by desserts as I left Up a Yard. Because as I'm leaving Up a Yard, there's a barbecue restaurant next door, and in the window they had a sign that said, and had a picture that said, "We sell peach cobbler egg rolls." And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I need it in my mouth.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And I resisted the urge to go get dessert in addition to an awesome meal, but now I know I've got to go try those peach cobbler egg rolls. It's like a bucket list item now. So excited for that at some point. But Mac,
Yeah.
on that note, I say we do what we do best. And we hop right into the gaming news and episode 300. What do you think?
Let's do it. Mr. Nice Guy, what is new in video gaming?
So much. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those who are here live, and the so many of you who download our show every week. We never talk about the numbers, and we're not going to talk about it today. But I'm always blown away that two besties who talk about video games for fun have the audience that we have. And we're grateful for each and every one of you. Episode 300 is a go. And Mac, we have a lot of great news to talk about today. Let's start with kind of a retro topic, something that's going to maybe make you reminisce and
Relevant
think about
to my interests?
well, and think about games of old that maybe you would like to see brought back. This is on GameSpot.com by Cameron Koch. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He writes, at BlizzCon 2013, then World of Warcraft executive and producer, and later Blizzard president J. Allen Brack infamously said, quote, "You think you do, but you don't," in response to a fan asking about being able to replay old expansions from the World of Warcraft history. Flash forward to 2024, and there's not just one old-school classic version of Blizzard's enduring MMORPG to play, but four. It's an impressive accomplishment for a bite-sized team of a few dozen developers that exist within the larger WoW, World of Warcraft, development team at Blizzard. It goes on to say, WoW Classic, which launched in 2019 as a largely unaltered version of the original game as it used to be in 2024, proved to be hugely successful. And since then, Blizzard's first re-released game's popular Burning Crusade expansion, before having players progress to Wrath of the Lich King, the more popular expansion in the game's history. So, Mac, bottom line here is sometimes the gamers are right, sometimes the executives are wrong. We really do know what we want and what we want to play, and I feel like we as gamers have our hand on the pulse of the market more than the execs would think we do. So my question for you is, if there was an old game that you could see brought back, maybe it's a game that requires servers. Maybe it's a game that is co-op, because I know you're not into PvP, or maybe it's just a game that you'd like to see remade with quality of life updates, with saves, with better controls than it had back in the day. What game is Maction, or games is Maction bringing back?
So
in an ideal world.
So I will say I am reminded in this moment of that old saying, the customer is always right in matters of taste, which is exactly what you're saying, which, by the way, is in case anybody didn't know, that is the full quote. Much like Jack of all trades, master of none, but better a master of none than only one.
Yeah.
is the whole quote. A lot of these quotes that you hear mean the exact opposite of what people say they mean, and are usually just an excuse to be mean or cruel to service workers. Anyway, point being, yeah, not surprising that us gamers would know what we want to play more so than the exec.
Right.
Anyway, to your actual question, though, Mr. Nice Guy, I feel like I've got one in mind that I would really like.
What's that?
But just in general, I would say that I don't think that there is as much of a reason for most games to be down in the way that they are. That if I could have my wish, I would kind of bring them all back by having, the game company release the code in such a way that people could, maintain their own servers or have fan servers support.
Sure.
Things like that. I would love for you to have Gotham City Imposters once again.
Dude, you beat me to it.
And I would love for me to have Drop Mix again, because I really love that game, and its reliance on central servers is unfortunate. But, yeah.
Not to get too deep in the rabbit hole, but would there be copyright issues with that? I assume there's probably copyrighted licensing in there.
Technically speaking, there's copyrighted licensing with regards to most things, but you're talking specifically about the musics.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the same time, not as much as I think, because Harmonix stopped support for Drop Mix. But yet they still have the license on all of those musics because they're currently using them in Fuser, which is the game that, that's like Drop Mix, but completely online instead of in the physical space. So
Got it.
I don't think that the licensing of the musics was the issue. But, I mean, then again, I don't know. I'm not privy to those conversations.
Well, you beat me to it. I have a lot of memories and a lot of hours that I put into Gotham City Imposters. And at the time that it came out, it was like a $15 game. But I remember it was popping on the internet. There was DLC they'd release every once in a while for like $5 with new guns and new gadgets and things like that. And it was, Batman versus Jokers. But you were all like kind of homebrew heroes. It wasn't like real Batman or real Joker. It was just like a bunch of characters who were battling each other within the confines of the game in multiplayer PvP. And they were on roller skates. They had knives. Like, it was just
Were they
really
wearing
cool.
hockey pads?
Yeah, they were wearing hockey pads and had like homemade masks, and it was just really a really good game that was balanced and got supported for quite a while. I believe it's free. It was free to play on Steam, but I think it's since been delisted, and I don't know if the servers still even exist. But man, I love that game. The other game I would say quickly is obviously GoldenEye, right? GoldenEye is a game where I think Nintendo, first of all, there's licensing issues. Like, they couldn't use Pierce Brosnan anymore. He wanted nothing to do with the series. When the GoldenEye Wii came out about a decade ago, maybe 13 years ago, but that game got so much hype, and I had so much fun playing that game, it didn't quite capture the magic that was GoldenEye 64. But I do think that a GoldenEye PvP game would do well. And there are some out there. There's GoldenEye Source, which is made by the people. And I know that the servers are down for GoldenEye Wii. There may be some fans that run their own servers. But that's one I feel like we should bring back. Mac, anything in the chat that people are saying, games they'd like to see brought back?
Yeah. Ishmobile mentions the Journeyman Project would be a fun one to revisit. He isn't entirely sure that it would hold up, though. And if I remember properly, the Journeyman Project was a point-and-click adventure game.
Cool. Well, hey, let's keep things moving. Mac, we have kind of a theme today in terms of the news stories because we're talking about old games being brought back in terms of World of Warcraft Classic. I want to share another story, which is a little bit more frustrating and disappointing. This is kind of an opinion piece that I pulled from Xputer. The author is Hannah Iftikhar. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Here is what Hannah writes. Once again, I'm back to discuss the age-old debate of physical versus digital games. Over time, such circumstances arise that essentially force me to return to this topic. What happened this time, you ask? All in due time, my friend. First, let me ask you this. What's your stance on the topic? Do you believe in the merits of physical games or in the ease of access to digital games? So, as I scroll down here, here is what she writes. Now to the topic at hand. I told you I'll be discussing the reason for this discussion, so here it is. Recently, a peculiar bug has surfaced in PlayStation. The bug essentially wipes your library, meaning you lose access to the games you purchased from the PlayStation Store. Your license to these purchases fails to verify as you sit there in horror of a hefty loss. In the last week, multiple users have reported coming across this bug and losing their purchased digital games. The number is not too high to make it commonplace. It's still a rare bug. However, the fact remains that it does exist and is affecting players like you and me, who stand on the verge of losing their precious collections and authentically purchased digital games. Last thing, here's what she says. I'd like to add that this bug is not entirely unfixable. Having the receipts for your purchases and taking to customer support has helped some users reclaim their games. Similarly, some other people reported that extending their PS Plus subscription has fixed this issue for them. Mac, this is something that we haven't seen before. We've certainly seen delisted games. We've certainly seen games where you own it, but it's no longer available for download, which I guess is kind of delisting. And we've seen, if you own a disc, but you need to update it in order to play the game, and that update is no longer available, you own a disc that's now a paperweight. What are your thoughts on this new bug as it relates to the topic at hand?
Well, number one, terrifying. Number two, I've come to grips with the knowledge that anything that I've purchased digitally, I understand to some extent that it could go away.
Right.
And I sort of walk in with eyes wide open on that. But it is quite frustrating because of all of the attempts to not highlight that fact. There was a thing that they did some years back in like the EU, right? It was one of the things that they enacted as part of their right to repair reforms. And they were like, hey, when you sell a product, you must inform the user in advance how long you the company who sells it, plan on supporting this / how long this product should be expected to last. Sure. And if it doesn't last that long, you company are repairing it, requiring, and that was appliances, some electronic devices, laptops, phones, things of that nature. And I think it would very much behoove us as an industry, as video games, for that to be a requirement, for a game company to have to be upfront with how long something is expected on their side, how long you're expected to be able to play and participate. Now, that doesn't really touch the problem here in this particular circumstance with the storefront having issues, but I think the transience of the titles that we're buying digitally is something that is not forward-facing and isn't something that we've got eyes on enough. So when something like this happens, people are very, very surprised by it.
Yeah, so I guess my question for you, I mostly agree with you, but if a company makes a statement like that, are we considering it binding, or are we just kind of saying we expect you to act in good faith? Because if it's binding, no company is ever going to make that kind of statement. And I'll tell you why. If we look at just the number of industry layoffs that have happened this year alone, I can't help but think that at least some of those were unexpected. Studios go under all the time, and it's not always because of their games not doing well. It's because of decisions by the board. It's because of forward-looking projections and, shareholders not being happy and all types of things. Games get canceled mid development, despite the fact that a lot of money has been sunken into them. And so for a company to put out a game and say, hey, we expect this to be up 5 years, we're going to support it for 5 years, it becomes a moot point if half the team gets laid off and they can no longer support it. And then it puts that company in a situation where, okay, now we don't have the money to pay these people we just laid off, but we also have to compensate all these gamers who we promised that the game would be available for 3 years. So I agree with you. It'd be nice. I just don't see that ever happening for that reason. It's too risky on their part. Unless you're Activision, I guess.
We're going to come back to that later.
I can't wait.
I will say that I think it would be good for us to have more expectations of companies, not just to act in good faith, but to be bound. Because I feel like, I don't know, as I get older and older, I just feel like I see too many companies behaving not in good faith, especially in the video game scene. So I don't think any expectation of good faith is good enough.
I agree.
I think they would have to be something binding. And at the same time, I do wonder in a style where a game company had to bind itself to that sort of support, would they set aside more money from previous things to the long-term support of a title? And would that maybe ensure some people's jobs for longer because they had to play it safer as a result of the regulatory scheme?
It's interesting. I want to read a couple comments if we have time in the chat. The last thing that I would say on this topic is owning the physical games is important. And it's a big part of why I own this bad boy, my Analog Pocket, because it allows me to play my old games in the best way possible and to enjoy them. We often hear about the convenient reasons why digital games are so much better. You can not have to switch your disc. They don't take up space, etc., etc. However, that reason is going to go away in 10 years when current gen consoles are now retro and you cannot download those digital games anymore. And it's hard to find the physical copy potentially.
Or to your point, even less than 10 years. We've had some video games as services that have gone down in 1 year, 2 years. I think the shortest I've ever seen is I think Ubisoft pulled the plug on something after, like 3 months, I want to say.
Well, and then, I have to bring up the example of the zombie MMO the day before by Fantastic that shut down like a week after they put it up on Steam. And everyone got refunded. Mac, what are people saying in the chat before we wrap this segment up? Anything we should read?
So we're certainly seeing some love for for video games as always, but for physical and older games. Ishmael mentions about older games that he has backed up patches for because the game can be unplayable on modern Windows without a patch. Yeah, very smart. I expect nothing less from Tech Geek Ishmael. And let's see. And Galvatron, of course, sharing some. Same with the physical games. Since games now must be downloaded, all publishers have to do is pull the file from the server or erase that online check from the disk, and the disk becomes a drink coaster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the comments. That has been the news for the week.
Well, now that we've taken a look at what's going on around us right now, let's take a little look into the past with some video game history. This last week in years before was were fantastic years for video games. I would be remiss if I did not mention the 2017 release of the Nintendo Switch and the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Absolutely fantastic game. As much as I give Nintendo a hard time, and I still think I'm justified in all of those, their teams that they set to work are undoubtedly people who have a love for the game that they're working on.
Sure.
A desire to really, really push the boundaries of what is doable and to bring an experience almost every single time in their mainline series do I feel like we're getting a video game that is beautiful and wonderful and deserves to be experienced. In addition to experiencing that at a moment in time where I really, really needed a Zelda title in my life, it was a fantastic and wonderful experience for me. I think it will be on my personal list of favorite games of all time. Mr. Nice Guy, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but based on previous conversations, you have similar feelings about Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's a straight up masterpiece. You know, people call it Legend of Zelda Skyrim and things like that. It's not quite a Skyrim game, but it just brought so much new to the table that almost made it like Nintendo has no reason to ever go back to make a Zelda that is less than open world. I would say that it's objectively one of the 5 best video games of all time. Maybe 10, you know, like, because it's tough. Once Tears of the Kingdom came out, it's like, which one of those is better? It's up for debate. But I mean, it got 10s of 10s across the board, 10 out of 10 across the board. And I just had a ton of fun with it. My kids had fun with it. Something that people can play, makes you feel smart. Tons of different stuff to do. Phenomenal game.
Oh, yeah. One of the only real sad things about Breath of the Wild, in my opinion at least, is that we found out that during the development process of Breath of the Wild, they actually had basically the mechanics of Breath of the Wild functioning in a game not unlike the original Legend of Zelda. So like a top-down view, like the first Legend of Zelda, to test to make sure that the mechanics were interesting and fun to play with before they ever implemented them into the 3D version. And one of the sad things is that we know that that exists. However, we have no access to something like that. And I would love to experience a Breath of the Wild's story in, say, the Link to the Past's engine. Maybe it'll come out of the Disney Vault. I mean, the Nintendo Vault.
Right.
At some point in time in the future. But yeah. Breath of the Wild, masterpiece. I 100% agree with you, Lon.
Yeah, great game.
Well, there is one other one that I wanted to talk about. Foundational, perhaps, video game for some of us here, released in 1999 for the PC. A little game called EverQuest. So, real talk. I was not the biggest MMORPG person, right? And EverQuest was, top dog. 30 expansions since its release. But back in the day, what I was a fan of multiplayer online RPGs. Back then, they were text-based, and we called them MUDs, for multi-user dungeon. Nice Guy, did you ever play any MUDs?
It wasn't my thing, Mac, and I have to be honest with our audience. PCs are something that have really been my thing the past 3 to 5 years, I would say. We built the PC. You came out to my place 2020, right before the pandemic, and we built my gaming PC. And so gaming on PC is more recent for me. So I want to hear your thoughts on it, though.
Well, I was definitely a computer nerd at heart, going back till basically the very beginning. And yeah, these MUD text-based dungeons. Just imagine, an MMORPG, but all you're doing is you've got your little text box in front of you. You're interacting with everything with text, and you're getting a readout of the various things that are going on. And now, MUDs usually didn't have too frightfully many people in it. It could only support a certain amount.
Sure.
But the sensibilities that we got from MUDs are what evolved into the MMORPGs, which is what we called them once we added the graphical aspect with things like Meridian 59 and Ultima Online. Which Ultima Online, for example, launched in 97. It had a couple of years. It was the only game in town. Well, I mean, Meridian 59 on the 3DO, but we'll keep going. But Ultima Online was definitely there until it got unseated by EverQuest. It became popular so fast. And even, GameSpot that thought that EverQuest was Game of the Year for 1999. So very popular, critically acclaimed. And of course, while eventually World of Warcraft would take over the MMORPG scene, EverQuest still very alive and well. We're expecting the 31st expansion this upcoming December.
Wow.
Because ever since about 2017, they've done an expansion every December for EverQuest, at least one expansion, in order to, add some new content. Sometimes it increases those level caps, adds new content and bug fixes and things of the like. But it's, we talk about old games sometimes, and this game from 1999, it still does my heart good, especially with something that relies exclusively on online serving of content. It is good to see that sometimes these things can indeed keep going. Life finds a way, as they say.
Yeah, I feel like there's a music reference out there waiting to be made. What's that song? Abu Di, Abu Da, oh la la la.
Oh, la di, oh la da, life has on. Yeah, that beat. We don't want.
We don't
That's
want to
Beatles.
get
We don't wanna
copyright
get sued.
stricken.
Yep.
So we'll move on. Mac, did you have other games in that segment, or we
No, that was history for this week.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the indie game of the week, where we talk about a game that maybe may need more attention and tell you whether or not it deserves your attention. I am going to post a link to this week's game in the chat in case it becomes of interest to you. This week's game, Mac, is called Saga of the Moon Priestess. Released January 24th, 2024. Here is the description on Steam. Explore a mystical world in classic top-down style and save the kidnapped prince. Saga of the Moon Priestess is a retro top-down action-adventure inspired by 8-bit and 16-bit classics. Currently sits at positive on Steam with 12 reviews. Developer Pixel Trash and East Asia Soft Limited, published by East Asia Soft Limited. Shout out to them for the codes. They did provide us with codes. It does not affect our opinion of the game. Mac, I want to hear your thoughts on this game.
This game is anything but pixel trash. This is pixel treasure. See, that's a joke about the
I like it.
Thank you. But no, I really enjoyed Saga of the Moon Priestess. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about a game here that very much leans into its Game Boy Zelda style. Even the power-ups very much have you select one of the available ones, and that becomes your power-up in use. The enigmatic NPCs who all have dialogue but usually don't have that much to do to help.
Right.
And even a fortune teller to point you presumably the right way at some point in time.
Yeah.
It has a lot of good going for it. It is short, however. Which I think is kind of the only thing about it that I did not love, was just that it was too short. It was fantastic. It was a great time, but just a skosh too short. But I loved it, Mr. Nice Guy. The graphics, the style. I mean, I'm also a big fan of spears as a weapon, and they're very underused in video games. Everybody's always opting for a sword and shield. Spear is where it's at. So I was in love the moment that our heroine uses a spear.
Like, I don't want to be redundant. I think you really summarized it well. If you're the type of gamer who likes Link to the Past, Link's Awakening style Zelda games, that's what this is. I guess the positives are exploration, items, like just plain fun. Like, I started playing this one night and I just could not put it down. This is a game I actually played a while back when my wife and I were on a trip. And so I haven't played it as much recently, but I remember messaging Mac and being like, because at first they sent us one code and I was like, this game is really good. Let me see if I can get another one. And they were nice enough to send us another one. So I'm glad you got to enjoy it as well. I guess the minor complaints that I have about this game are, we're so used to the level of polish that comes with A Link to the Past and The Legend of Zelda. This game doesn't have that level of polish. Even just as you're walking, maybe it's charming to some, but something about the animation just kind of irritated me. It's almost like the character is not part of the environment. I don't really know how to verbalize it, but it just seemed like something was off. And I don't want to say that it was cheaply made. I think that it was actually an intentional decision, but I feel like it almost broke the immersion of the world a little bit. Just the animation of the character. So that to me was like a very, very minor complaint. But other than that, like, you know, you really don't need a ton of story with this game. You just need to have played these types of game before. I think one other thing that made this challenging for me to fully appreciate, and I did love it, just to be clear, but the fact that we have played Prodigal in the past. Because to me, that game is the gold standard of a non-Nintendo top-down exploration Legend of Zelda style game. And nothing really can compare to that. And the fact that they're in the same price range, Mac, and that Prodigal often goes on sale for $3.74, you know, as a game reviewer, as a gamer, I can't help but think, I like this game, but I'm also comparing it to this past love, this game that I enjoyed before that set the bar.
Nice Guy can't get over his ex. You heard it here first.
I can't get over Prodigal. I just can't. Now, Mac, that said, this game, $6.99, what do you think as far as the price?
Absolutely. I mean, it kept me entertained for longer, you know, for basically what I would have paid at a movie ticket and then some. Definitely, 100%. And you're right, Prodigal may definitely have more content in it. But I think for even for its slightly less polished than we're used to, I was not squeamish at all by the price.
Yeah, and I think I said $6.99. It's actually $5.99, just to be accurate. What did you think about the difficulty level of this game?
I thought it was just about right. There were a couple of times that I did get frustrated until I remembered things like, oh, I can press that switch with another item that I have. That was the one that kept throwing me for a loop, was forgetting that I could press switches with one of my items at a distance. And that was, once I finally got that into my head, puzzles I didn't think were much of a problem. There is one that I still haven't solved, but I'm waiting to come back to it with some fresh eyes.
Yeah.
I don't want a spoiler, though, because it's definitely late game stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the 2-nerd scale of out of 5, and by the way, I think we can use half points, right?
Okay.
What did you think out of 1 to 5?
4.5 out of 5.
I feel like I have given pretty much every game the same score, and that's not going to change today, because while I really, really did enjoy this and it was a phenomenal palate cleanser, to me, it's not an S-tier game. It's a very, very good game, and when you consider that it's $5.99, I think that makes it even better. But I'm still going to give this one a 4 out of 5. That's where I believe it belongs. Great game, and I think it's worth your time. Minor complaints, but check it out on Steam if that's your thing. That's been our Indie Game of the Week.
All right, well, now let's turn to a game that's trying to get off of the ground. We call this Kick, or Kick Start. Mr. Nice Guy, I am posting a link in the chat so that everybody who's here with us for, once again, the live recording on twitch.tv for episode 300, as well as every other episode since the beginning, we have a link for you to check and let us know what you think. Let us know, Kick or Kickstart. So, Mr. Nice Guy, this little title is called Sugar Dew Island. And with a name like Sugar Dew Island, I think you might be able to divine some of what they're trying to tap into here.
Yeah.
With an added dash, though, of shopkeeping, somewhat similar to Recettear, or any of those sort of, small business simulation type games. The game starts in a straightforward enough vein. You kind of wake up on a desert island, and now you need to press forward from there. And early game is very much a sort of start from scratch, build from the ground up, and then eventually you have a a basically farm store that you build and that you will sell things at. There is a mechanic in here for, gathering whatever sorts of fruits, whatever kinds of resources, and then selling them to the denizens of the island. Seem to be a bit more animal or spirit related. The game itself has this sort of third-person 3D style of game that is just a hair off of chibi style. I don't know as the features are quite exaggerated enough to call it chibi, but then again, who am I to gatekeep that way? The minimum buy-in is $25 for a digital copy, supposed to be released around August of this year, so that's only about, 5 months out at this point?
Yeah.
And they already have blown past their $32,000 goal. And in case this sweetens the pot for any of our German-speaking friends out there, this is a small game studio from Germany. So just in case that sweetens the pot, anybody, there are a couple of things that we do find out. There won't be any relationship mechanics in this game, which is a little bit different from the Stardew and Harvest Moon type games that you might be used to. Anything you would like to add?
No. I mean, once again, we kind of do this off the cuff intentionally so that I have not really studied this. But looking at it at first glance, I guess it's very, very derivative of Stardew Valley, right? That's no secret. And I just Googled while you were talking. Stardew Valley has sold 30 million copies. I know that it is $15 on Steam because I've added it to my wish list. Because, hey, even a gamer like me who likes the more exciting, the PvP, the PvE, the co-op shooters, and the sports and all that RPG stuff, even a guy like me needs a cozy game, right? It's interesting to me that they're pricing this at $25 when it's so derivative of a game that has sold 30 million copies that is $15 and regularly $9.99 on sale. I just don't think that's a good look. And Stardew Valley has such a rabid community that I even read an article today that said there's a hidden thing where if you're farming from left to right, the developer had actually added code that makes it so that it's 100 milliseconds faster than farming right to left. There's little gems that are hidden that are just coming to light 10 years later. And I can link that article in the chat so you'll know I'm not BSing. Point being, unless this game has some type of hook, I just don't understand why it is priced more heavily than the definitive game in this genre. I do like that their August of 2024 release date is not far away, so people who are interested can get their hands on it. This looks phenomenally polished. I think it's going to be a great game, but I feel like there's a lack of self-awareness in the pricing.
Well, but Mr. Nice Guy, what do we know? They've already blown through their goal. Clearly this is a done deal, and you and I are just behind the times.
You know what, though? Here's the thing. They set a goal that was low, and then they have all these stretch goals. Base game was 30,000. Expanding character selection was 40,000. And this is a smart tactic. It's a tactic a lot of Kickstarters do, where they set a base goal so it's guaranteed to get funded, and then they add features that they were going to add anyway as stretch goals, right? So I honestly think this looks good. I just don't understand why they're pricing it so much higher than Stardew Valley.
Yeah, I would enjoy asking, but I think it definitely, for some people, it's not not a turnoff in this case. I will say, though, there is definitely one thing that I've left till last, because I always leave it till last, and that is whether or not it has a playable demo, because it is important to show that you've got substance, not just polish, and I am sad to say that this one does not have a playable demo. For as much as I like and would enjoy a cozy farm shop like this, as much as I think it, plays a lot of the notes that I really want to hear in a video game, I'm not going to take a risk, especially not at $25 for something that can't, and especially if you're only 5 months away from release, from prime time. You should have something for me to play and try and get a feel for it. Especially with that price tag of $25, I feel like everybody needs more. than just the renders and the writing to really, to really become converted to your product. But what do we know? I've never run a successful Kickstarter before.
Are you kicking or kickstarting this one?
Much as I want to kickstart, no playable demo means a kick from me.
Automatic. So here's the thing, and you may not have expected this based on my words. I'm actually going to kickstart it.
Woo!
Because I think that we need more cozy games in the industry. And I really liked the episode. I believe it was 3 episodes ago when I was gone, where Brittany was the guest, and she talked about cozy games that are out there.
Yeah.
And I think we all could use some cozy games in our life. So kickstart from me.
100% agree. We need them, but bring up a demo next time. Again, we wish everybody the best, but that has been Kick or Kickstart.
Awesome. Now it's time for Nerd Flex. A woo-hoo. A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the hosts. Sometimes you do, sometimes you do not. Mac, we have our test bank ready to go, but for those of you who are here live, if you have questions that you want to get in the chat, please do. Multiple choice, gaming related. If not, that's no big deal. We got this trusty, dusty test bank ready to go. Let's start with this question. And Mac, it was recently March 10th, which is Super Mario Day. I legitimately just hit the randomizer, and the first question that came up was a Mario one. I don't believe we've done this before, this question. According to the movie, let me know if we've done this before. According to the movie, what is Mario's surname?
This must be about the old movie.
Yeah.
In which case, Mario's last name is Mario. He's Mario. His brother is Luigi Mario.
That's correct. I remember that. Which is so weird, but probably not canon in the Nintendo universe. Let's see if that's the correct answer. Yeah, Mario. His full name being Mario. That's exactly right. Well done, Maction.
Well done, us.
Well done, us.
And well done, whoever wrote the script for that, 1980s movie.
This is one I do not know. What was the name of the 1998 band fighting game for the PlayStation 1, which featured fetish acts? It's a family-friendly show. That's a weird question, but it's in there, and I'm okay with that question being in there. I'm not sure what game that is. Pretty sure my parents wouldn't have allowed it in the house in 1998.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I think it's an appropriate line.
Mac is funny. That's kind of an inside joke right there.
Well, I mean, it's only an inside joke to people who have seen the first option, Lom's comedy special, that you should all watch because it's awesome.
Time to record another one. But anyway, Mac, I don't know what game this is.
Yeah.
When I think of banned games, I think Mortal Kombat, but not banned in the U.S. Like, I'm super interested to hear what it is. Interested if the chat knows. But hey, let's just flip the card. I'm just going to say one of the Killer Instinct games. Probably not the case. Let's flip it and see. A game called Thrill Kill, which I have never heard of.
I have never heard of this either.
For science, knowing that it was banned, I've got to go to pricecharting.com real quick and see what it costs.
And find out?
Because if it was banned, I imagine this game is probably pretty expensive. Thrill Kill. And it doesn't even come up. So who knows? It's probably on eBay.
It is Thrill Kill is a canceled video game developed by Paradox Development for the PlayStation. So I guess it never got released. So I guess, but I mean, I see some videos. I see at least one video. Interesting.
I'm showing a copy on, this may not be legit, but on eBay for $333. That can't be real. But anyway, let's move on to our third question of the day. We learned something new today. That's why you come.
Yeah.
It's the more you know.
Pum, 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 pum.
Capcom question, another tough one. What farmyard animal features as a points booster in 1943? Now, Mac, you're familiar with 1943, I assume.
Is it one of them? One of those ones where you're flying around and shooting?
Yeah.
Shmups.
Yeah, it's a shmup. It takes place in 1943. But I don't know what farmyard animal. I'm trying to think back because I love these types of games and I love 1943.
The options seem to me
Cow,
pig, sheep, or chicken is what I think.
Horse?
I guess maybe horse. Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I don't remember seeing cows, but I'm gonna go with cow.
Sheep, just because I think that would be, I don't know. Yeah. I'll go with sheep.
Dude, I guessed right. And probably just because it's the most common farm animal you think of, it was indeed a cow.
Heck yes. Mr. Nice Guy coming in clutch.
2 for 3. That has been Nerdflex.
All right. Well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese.
Legalese.
So, Mr. Nice Guy, once again, I run into the unfortunate situation where I prepped some stuff for this legalese segment, to talk about, and it was going to end and be just like, all right, but we're going to see more of this as it comes around. And then just earlier, like, I guess last week or so, it was settled. And settled is a strong word.
Interesting.
Because really what happened was that the suit was arbitration was compelled. As you know, with a lot of video game companies in their license agreement, when you agree to play the game, you tend to agree to a compelled arbitration in case you have any issues, any concerns, and the like. And so that sometimes might take a situation where perhaps you have a very legitimate claim or a legitimate legal question that winds up never really seeing the light of day. So if you'll forgive me, even though it is mooted, I think it is a worthwhile question to just kind of ask about.
Yeah, let's do it.
So instead of grappling with the exact, claims in Rodriguez and Abner v. Activision Blizzard, this had to do, until, of course, forced arbitration, this had to do with a suit against Activision Blizzard for what they say was unlawfully restraining essentially the competitive scene for Call of Duty, where Rodriguez was trying to start a Call of Duty professional team, and Abner is a professional Call of Duty player, and that their contention is that Activision Blizzard had no reason to deny Rodriguez for making a team, but deny him they did. And so anyway, this is being forced into arbitration, so we won't get more details about it, unfortunately. But I think the question overall is about a video game competitive scene. Where does a video game company, where does their sphere of influence stop? And what we do know and what we don't know. And one of the things that we do know is that that video game companies certainly seem to have the force of law, the sway, if you will, with public performance rights. If you think about, if we just go back to, say, episode 249, when we talked about Nintendo shutting down the Smash World Tour.
Exactly.
They, of course, have that public performance right because it's their intellectual property.
Exactly.
And if they don't want you to be doing a tourney, they can put the kibosh on that. And that does kind of make sense that intellectual property covers that, because when you think of when we were first drawing up these rules, we were mostly protecting things like books and musical acts, music performances,
right,
and the like. It did lead me down just this little bit of a weird rabbit hole that I want to share, Nice Guy. Did you know that there are actually people who will go around and find jukebox owners at establishments for not paying the music industry their cut from the jukebox? Yeah. You actually can license your jukebox with the appropriate authorities so that the plays from that jukebox from those artists getting their cut for the public performance that's being done.
That's interesting.
Which is, very, very interesting. But the other bit of stuff that I came across about this was about last year this time. The Department of Justice went after Activision Blizzard because of their competitive balance tax. Nice Guy, did you hear about any of this? Because it completely escaped me.
No, this went over my head. I missed it. I want to hear about it, though.
I'm not surprised that neither of us ran into it, because unlike most lawsuits, which I think, Nice Guy, just shot in the dark, how long do you think a lawsuit from the Department of Justice against Activision Blizzard, how long do you think that's going to draw out?
Oh, 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5, yeah, right? I mean, bare minimum, I feel like that's the type of stuff we can expect.
Yeah.
This settled in like under 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and without a single deposition, Activision Blizzard said, yep, you got us. We'll stop doing it immediately. And you can appoint someone that we will pay 4 years' salary to make sure that we don't do anything like this in the future. Which kind of makes you say, Activision probably did something really wrong to just immediately. So what they did, their competitive balance tax is what they call it, under which Activision Blizzard set a salary cap for professional teams and then said, if you exceed that salary cap, we will fine you all that money over that cap and redistribute it to the other teams. So if you pay somebody more than we told you the max amount of their salary can be as a competitive Call of Duty player, we'll take that all away and give it to into the other, to the rest of the teams in the league. Which the Department of Justice said, no, that's not something you guys can do. So anyway, all of this is to say that while we do, and while it is settled law, and while I think we can all kind of understand that we can't just have tournaments without the say-so of the game company, there's still very much an active disagreement about where the game company can, say yay or nay on stuff. Salaries of the competitive players, clearly that's a nay. And what was going to be at issue here in this suit that's no longer going forward anymore was about whether or not Activision Blizzard could basically just say, no, we feel like we've got enough pro teams in Call of Duty. We're not going to allow you to form a pro team. So we aren't going to find that out now, but my sincere hope is that this is something that gets answered, because I think it's a worthwhile, legal question to ask. And like I said, it's not a settled legal question, so it's not law, but it is legalese.
Love it, Mac. Love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for tuning in to episode number 300 of Two Nerds in a Pod. Woo! We did it, Mac. We made it.
We did it.
For those of you who are still live here, we have a segment we do before we go called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that. If you're here live in the chat, let us know what you've been watching and playing, because we're always looking for cool, nerdy stuff to get into. Mac, what have you been watching and playing the past week, sir?
We've been going back through the old British game show. Well, it's a modern British game show called Taskmaster, but we've been going back through the old seasons. It's quite fun. We've been on a bit of a game show kick lately.
Nice.
Game Changer over on Dimension 20, Taskmaster, we're watching that on YouTube. And that's been a lot of what we've been watching lately. I've got plans for Contact, the old Carl Sagan movie, coming up this weekend. But, I should save that for next time.
That's all right.
But that's mostly what I've been watching. As for playing, I played a lot of Saga of the Moon Priestess this last week. Very cozy, fantastic. I think you called it a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Heck yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, we play a lot of Metroidvanias. So, as a reminder, if you see other games out there that are indies and you think, hey, Mac and Lom should try that out, please feel free to let us know and we can reach out to the devs or the publisher. But anyway, as far as what I've been watching and playing, Mac, I've been playing a good amount of games on my Analog Pocket. I did find a copy of Kirby's Dream Land this past weekend, which was never my favorite game, but it is a fun game. And so I picked that bad boy up. I've really become passionate about collecting these old cartridges, not just because of what we see happening to digital, but it's just fun if I can find them for affordable prices. I like having the collection. So, been playing a lot of stuff on the Analog Pocket. As far as new stuff, Helldivers 2. I picked that up maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I've been playing it a lot with members of the community, with friends, neighbors, anyone who ever wants to play. I believe Spenis, our good friend, just got it, Ruckus, Saul, and a few others have picked it up, so we've been squatting up on occasion and killing alien bugs and mechs. So that has been a blast, and I love the game. As far as watching Mac, I've been doing the game show thing too. Have you heard of The Floor, the game show The Floor?
I have heard the name, but I know nothing about it. What's it about?
Yeah, so it's on Hulu, and basically it's like 80 people. They each have a square on the floor, and they each have a topic they're an expert in, and they challenge each other. They go head to head, and pictures based on the topic that they're an expert in come up on the screen, and they go back and forth and have to name the object or name the song or name the person, and then whoever runs out of time first loses, and it's a quest for $250,000. And my kids and wife and I have been watching it and having a blast. It's a pretty solid game show. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Mac, why don't you take us home, my friend?
Thank you, everybody, for being here, for coming out to episode 300. It would not have been the same without you. We appreciate you being here live. We also appreciate you listening to this after the fact, and thank you. If you ever want to show for the live show, twitch.tv/2nerds-in-a-pod, and you can be part of the nerdiest gaming podcast in the multiverse live. But until we see you next, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central, be excellent to each other, keep it nerdy, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Deuces.